That's the handbrake. Wow, oh, I'm loving this. Hello and welcome! I'm DDF Racer, and today I'm going to be unboxing, installing and trying out this brand new handbrake on my sim rig for the first time. I wish I could tell you which brand it is, but to be honest, I don't actually know. It's an eBay special because yes, I'm a cheapskate. The truth is, I don't really need a top-of-the-range handbrake. The vast majority of my sim racing time is spent on a closed racetrack doing laps, and I don't do any drifting either. But every few weeks for something different, I do enjoy a good rally, whether it's Dirt Rally 2.0, more recently Richard Burns Rally, or hopefully, once VR is implemented soon, EA WRC.
Well, we're waiting.
So far, I've been using my Fanatec shifter in sequential mode as a temporary solution, but that literally just acts as an on-off button. There's no progression or subtlety. Using the shifter as a handbrake also limits me to using the paddles to change gear instead. No H pattern, which is a shame and kinda feels like cheating for cars that would have been driven with a H pattern in reality. But it's not exactly the end of the world. Now, I'm sure that many of you watching have thought the same as me. A handbrake is one of those quality of life upgrades that would be nice to have, so for something that effectively only gets used for a few seconds every month, as long as it works, the cheaper the better, right? It's not as if it's a wheelbase with a built-in direct drive motor to convey the force feedback through your hands, or a fancy steering wheel with buttons and switches to map to your heart's content, or even pedals with load cell sensors and adjustable springs to get those braking zones nailed. It's literally just a lever that you pull. One axis. How hard could it be? Time to see what's inside the box then, and get this thing fitted to the rig. Don't worry guys, only a few small pieces of tape today, and I have watched several box cutter handling safety videos since my previous unboxing, so we're all in good hands here. Okay, well, as you can see, no branding, no external packaging. It's literally just a brown box that came from eBay with my shipping details blanked out for obvious reasons, you weirdos. Bare minimum padding as well, just a small sheet of foam and straight into the goods. That's what we're dealing with here, the handbrake and the fittings itself, and it's actually a lot lighter than I was expecting, a lot smaller than the pictures led it to be believed on eBay as well. So there we go, that's the handbrake. Very nice construction, no scratch marks, very nice and neatly packaged. There's a bit of fiber or swarf or something still on the side, but no, incredibly nice. That's great, I like that. Good first impressions, feels very solid. USB is attached, some brackets, some screws, and also some more Allen keys, bolts, nuts, and I'm gonna have a drawer full of this. No wonder people get to the age of like 50, 60-year-old and they've got like a shed full of stuff that they think, oh, one day I might use this. I don't want to throw any of this out in case it comes in useful. And that's it. That's literally all there is in the box. No instructions, no anything else, just that's it. Although before we throw the box away, we should see if it makes a good sound. Nah, it's alright. It's not as good as the ANSI 3D box. And here is a closer and more detailed look at what actually comes in the box as well. As you can see, lots of options, lots of different configurations, pretty much anything you could need to get this thing mounted to either your rig or, in the case of desk racers, a clamp for your table. Okay, now I want you to take a look at this. Underneath the handbrake itself, you can see the mounting patterns there. So you have 4 holes on the extremities, and the mounting options we've got a clamp with some big washers as well. So I think this is pretty much universally compatible. It's not like the Fanatec handbrake itself that actually mounts to the shifter. I don't believe you can do that with this thing, but luckily I have checked ahead on my rig, my Next Level Racing rig, and the shifter platform that comes with the rig where you can put your shifter on, it has an extra space on the left for your handbrake, or a space on the right. I'm on the left hand side with the shifter because I'm one of those weirdos who lives in Australia, and everything's on the left hand side over here. Okay, and let's see what kind of USB length we're dealing with here as well. Does look a bit on the short side. Maybe a couple of meters on that one. You might need a USB extension cable if your PC is a long way away from your rig. I know that most VR users who have their setup separate to their rig, it might not reach. You might need an extension or a hub. Just something to bear in mind, the USB cable isn't the longest. There we go, that's where it's gonna go. Actually, hold that thought, because we've encountered a little bit of a problem, unfortunately. I've put the screws on the side here to try and accentuate the issue that I'm having, but if you see here, the front screw is now lined up with this row. However, the back screw is now in between these two rows. It doesn't fit. Put my hand underneath there to give you a bit more contrast. So if I move that up to match, it's in between the top two rows there. So it's awkwardly not going to fit. And if I try and match it up with one of these 4 holes in the middle, then it's off the back of the rails there. So it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to use 4 screws to mount this thing to the rig. So I'm going to go with the front 2. Because if I mount it with the back 2 screws, what's going to happen is if I'm on the handbrake like this and I pull back on the handbrake and it's mounted at the back, it's going to pull up like that. Whereas if it's secured at the front, then naturally the weight is going to be pushing down into the back of the plate down here, so it should be fine. But that's all well and good. The next problem we've got is the screws supplied with this handbrake are actually a little bit too big and they don't fit. They don't fit into the holes here. There are some different sized bolts. Now, do these fit? No, they're too big as well. Problem solved. I found some M6 nuts and bolts that should do the trick. Thankfully, Next Level Racing came to save the day. They supplied me with far too many parts when they gave me this rig to put together, so I can use some of them now instead. Let's actually get this thing installed. There we go. It said it was just plug and play, so I don't need to switch it on. It's powered by the USB itself. Physically it works, and it feels great as well. That spring is fantastic. I didn't expect that much travel on a handbrake, to be honest with you. Maybe that can be dialed in a bit, but maybe that's what it's like. I don't know. Never having used a real racing handbrake before, I don't have a clue. This is all a big learning experience for me today. So the easiest way to check, I thought, would be to use Content Manager, because it's got a really nice UI. So, moment of truth, click to assign, and there it is. It's mapped. Yeah, pulling, and full. It's got a bit of a dead zone at the top as well. Like, I'm not all the way at full travel and it's reached 100. This is like literally 0 to 100 with no modifications. So I get to about there and it reaches 100 on the input register. If I pull a bit further, you can see on my hand, there's still a bit more travel there in it. So there's that much play at the end of it before I get all the way to the end. And I can't dial that out because that's mechanical dead zone. That's not software dead zone, that. And the same at the start as well. If I ever so lightly touch it, gets about here. You can't really see that behind the wheel. Let me see if I can. There we go. You can see my fingers a bit more as well now. So if I do that, and it only just starts to register there. There it is. It's only just registering. Yeah, that's a lot of travel. Very spongy, very quiet as well, and it does spring. It does spring back quite quickly as well. On the back of the handbrake, there is a screw. You can use this to adjust the travel in the handbrake. So now that's all the way in, and it's got like a micro pull on it like that. Now I can just dial it back out again like so. See how that's releasing the handbrake position? Oh, that's much better. Yeah, that was way too much travel before that. So if I just dial it back a bit like that, that feels pretty stiff to me. Not that I know anything about that kind of thing. It affects this screw in here. Dialing in this screw is pulling that in and out. There you go. You can see that in effect right there. That's pretty nifty, that. So let's go back to Content Manager and let's dial that back in again. So you can see it's in its natural resting position, but it's registering here halfway through the axis. So now this, you can see we dial it in until we get to 0. Yeah, that looks good to me now. So that's all nice and set up for Assetto Corsa now, which is all well and good, but I'm not going to be using the handbrake in Assetto Corsa. I'm going to be using it in Richard Burns Rally. Right. I think we've got this here. However, I don't think I can set a dead zone. Actually, scrap that. I've just found out how to do it another way. If you go into the Windows taskbar and type in Game Controllers, it'll bring up this little box. You can click on Handbrake, click on Properties, and then go to the Settings page and Calibrate. And then you can dial it in with the 0 and 100% based on the mechanical axis. And yes, there we go. Excellent. Handbrake is working from 0 to 100 in Richard Burns Rally with no tweaks in the software, just natural as it is, just because of the Windows calibration trick. All right, moment of truth. Let's see what this is all about then, shall we? This is the Peugeot 208 R2 at La Roca, as you can see on the screen, which is actually a very familiar stage for fans of the channel because I did it extensively a few weeks ago in the Richard Burns Rally Rookie Cup. I've chosen this because not only am I familiar with it, so I don't need to concentrate too much on the pace notes, I am also expecting a lot of hairpin turns on gravel, so handbrake should be pretty extensively used for this.
Go! 5 right.
Like I was saying, lots of hairpin turns today, so I'm expecting lots of handbrake. Now this isn't a handbrake corner, this is a pretty bog standard
3 left.
3. Same here as well, so I'm not going to start playing around with the handbrake too much here, just a little bit of left foot braking
right.
to get the car nosed in. Now here we go. Over-rotated it, I used too much handbrake, and that's the end of the stage already. That's going to happen a lot today, because this is completely new to me. I'm going to have to get used to this, so let's try again. Alright, let's try again.
3 right.
Oh, nice. That was nice. It wasn't a dramatic
right,
snap
100.
out with the rear like I was used to
1
previously.
left, 100.
And you can... Oh, that's nice. Being able to dial in a bit of partial handbrake at the end. Let's just get a bit more rotation going. Something I am noticing that I'm doing is I'm still reaching for my shifter. Because that's what I was using previously. I'm kind of having to stop myself from going to my gear shifter instead of the handbrake, especially when I put the VR headset on in a minute,
80.
which is how I do most of my driving normally. That's really going to take some getting used to.
Square right, round.
Oh, that's so subtle. That's so nice. Previously, I was putting the handbrake on for that corner,
right,
and it was
wide
like
out, keep right, 160.
snapping the rear and then sliding it all the way around. This is just so much more progressive. It's so much smooth. It gives you so much more control. You see what I mean, though, when I said plenty of hairpins in this stage. Wow. Oh, I'm loving this. It's
100.
definitely not natural. I still need to get used to this. I mean, that's Captain Obvious thing to say because I've literally only installed it 5 minutes ago. It's literally my first run, and I'm driving on a monitor, which I don't normally do, but I can feel the benefits already. And I'll go over that in a bit more detail shortly when I do a voiceover of some VR footage where I can actually concentrate on the driving and also what I'm trying to say at the same time. This is more just to get those initial impressions. I'm gonna drill down shortly and give you a little bit more detail. Don't you worry. I'm not just gonna leave you with like oohs and ahs and all that kind of reactionary responses, which is what gets the clickbait and gets the thumbnails and gets all the, you know, it gets the hype, but it doesn't actually get the information that you want when you want a product tested and you want like a proper review. And we'll just ignore the fact that I was completely off in the scenery there for a moment.
1 left, jump into 5 right.
So much smoother. It's nowhere near as severe. What about the handling? Not my driving. Okay, wow. Yes, in the fence again. That's probably a good time for me to wrap it up and give you some honest opinions and honest feedback and actual thoughtful commentary as opposed to just, the reactionary stuff. Okay, so roll the VR footage. Let's have a think about what I'm going to say about this thing.
several bad puns later.
Now, obviously, before recording this voiceover clip, I went off and did quite a bit more rallying, and not just the stage that you can see on the screen here, just to get a nice broad opinion of how this reacts and how this handles and how it feels. And I've got to be honest with you, it's absolutely amazing. It is on the budget end of the scale, but it does not feel like a budget product at all. It's super sturdy and it just works really well. Obviously, once you get past the initial configuration in the software and getting the whole thing installed and plugged in, which I admittedly probably made a little bit more difficult than it needed to be. But yeah, once you get that out of the way and get driving with it, getting your head wrapped around it is going to be the biggest challenge first. You are probably coming from a situation where you press the handbrake, and when I say press the handbrake, I mean press the handbrake because you're using a button or a paddle or a switch or a key or something as opposed to a lever, and it goes to 100%, and all of a sudden you have rear tires that are completely locked and you're out of control, and you then have to try and gather it up and control the slide. Different surfaces will accentuate this in different ways. Like on tarmac, if you pull the handbrake, then it is incredibly difficult to gather it back up again. You have to know exactly what the car is going to do. On gravel, it's a bit more forgiving because there's a bit more of a window around where the grip begins and ends, because technically you're not at 100% grip anyway, so you've got a bit of slide going on that you can play with. But yeah, previously you press the handbrake, you spend the next few seconds trying to gather it up. Yes, it gets you rotation, but it does it in such a brute force way that it does cost you time as opposed to gaining you 100% of the time. You know, you might lose 20% and gain 80. Whereas with this, with the handbrake, because you can feed it in gently, and because you can maybe apply half of the handbrake if you want to use half of the handbrake, because you don't need the full kick out of the rear to get it rotated. You might only need just a little bit dialed into the rotation just to help it turn. Then you can do that, and you're not going to lose that time of the car getting completely out of control and gathering it up again, because you're putting in exactly what you need to put in to get the car rotated. Now, the trick is knowing how much you need to put in. The tendency will be, when you first get one of these handbrakes, and I know this because this is what I've been doing, is to pull it back 100% and just get the rotation going, because that's what you're used to. You pull the handbrake, you press the button, and you get it turning, but it's going to take a little while to dial that out and to just be a little bit more gentle with it. It's definitely more of a tool to use at your disposal now, in the same way that you wouldn't get to the exit of a corner and accelerate at 100% straight away. In a front wheel drive, you're going to go off in a straight line to the side. In a rear wheel drive, you're going to spin the rears and you're going to lose control. You would never go from 0 to 100 in your throttle. You need to feed it in progressively to get the car stable and to get the power down and to get the acceleration done properly. And it's the same with this handbrake. You've just got to learn the new muscle memory of being progressive with it. And once you get your head around that, honestly, it's going to feel amazing. In terms of the actual construction of the handbrake itself, it's a little bit smaller than I expected, and I've had a few comments on Discord that some people might find the handle a little bit on the short side. I personally haven't found an issue, and if I do need some extra height in the future, then it shouldn't be too difficult to put some packers underneath it or something. As for the handle and the whole mechanism, is it flimsy? Does it have any wobble? Well, I can push it about half a centimetre beyond the 100% resting position. So when you've used the handbrake and you let go, it goes back to a position. There's a bit of play in it. You can push it forwards. Apart from that, no, it's super sturdy. In terms of mounting, you can either use the clamp provided if you're on a desk, or screw it down directly if you're on a rig. Although this handbrake only has screw holes underneath, you can't side mount it directly to the side of a Fanatec shifter, for example. Obviously, I couldn't mount it properly on my plate, my Next Level Racing rig, because it doesn't line up with the rails and the guides that they've got, unfortunately, so I've just mounted it at the front. So when I do let go of it in a hurry, it does lift up ever so slightly because of the force of the spring kicking in. It's not an issue. When I pull back, it's solid, it's absolutely sturdy, it's fine. So it depends on your mounting position, it really does. I could probably drill some holes into this thing and fix that, but then kind of defeats the point of having a pre-machined mounting plate, I guess, really. I'll probably have to go back to Next Level Racing, but they're probably used to Fanatec and Moser and all the other manufacturers of well-known, respected products. This is a cheapo $50 handbrake off eBay. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, and I never had those expectations going into it, but I would still say it is worth the money, and I would definitely recommend it. This one that I've got ships from Australia, which means that if you get the same one and you're not in Australia, it may be slightly more expensive depending on how much the shipping is going to cost, and it may also take a little bit longer as well. This turned up in just under a week, which is really not bad. The box says made in China, but I'm pretty sure the warehouse is in Australia, so it was domestic shipping, and trust me, for internal posts in Australia, a week isn't bad. The link is down in the video description if you're interested, and it's not an affiliate link. It's not I don't get any kickbacks from it. I'm not making any money off this link. This is purely for your reference purposes. And I mean, I guess that's another way you can tell this is an absolutely honest review. I'm not making any money off it. I've not been paid to do this. I've not been sent one of these for free. You know I wouldn't do that to you guys anyway with the clickbait titles and the, you know, honest review in capital letters, and you know, I'm not that kind of YouTuber. Maybe one day I should make a dishonest review video though. See how that goes. You don't see many of those floating around. But yeah, the point I was making was this is an independent seller with no affiliate program, and it's probably not going to be widely known. It's probably not going to be conforming to the industry standards, but it mounts fine. It does the job just fine. There is a little bit of a squeak in it, but that's nothing a little bit of lithium grease can't sort out, to be honest. Works on the Fanatec pedals, it'll work on this handbrake. Something else I would like to point out as well is the fact that this uses a Hall sensor and not a potentiometer. Now, a Hall sensor is generally speaking much more reliable, as potentiometers can be a little bit flaky and prone to failure. That's actually what's fitted in the Fanatec handbrake by default as well. I know a few people on my Discord have had those over the years, and they've generally all had problems with the potentiometers and they've all had to be replaced. So a Hall sensor, much more reliable, and it is much better quality as well. So although this is a cheaper handbrake, they've not cheaped out on the electronics at all. And that's a really good sign, and a step above what most people would expect for the bottom of the market. And last but not least is this frees up my shifter again to use for H-pattern cars, because obviously, as I said earlier in the video, previously I was using my shifter in sequential mode as a temporary handbrake. So no more paddles, no more shifter as a handbrake. I can use my shifter as it's intended, and I can actually use a dedicated handbrake now. So in terms of pure enjoyment, having a handbrake, it gives you the option to be able to experience those classic cars that do use a shifter and a H-pattern and heel and toe as they were meant to be driven. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to drive them any better though, but that's not the point. All in all though, I love this thing. Honestly, it's great, especially for the price. I'm sure that there are better products out there on the market that the top sim racing companies would have been manufacturing for the last few years. But I don't really personally feel the need for much more than this. I mean, maybe when I start using it for a few months and I start to find more limitations in it, which again, you should probably subscribe to the channel and see my upcoming live streams to get that. But yeah, maybe I'll find some limitations and maybe I'll run into some problems in the future, but I honestly don't see where that could be at the moment. Now, don't get me wrong though, you could quite easily live without this. You could go your entire sim racing life and never have a handbrake, and you'd never be none the wiser. I mean, I have for the best part of 15 years, but there'll come a point when you want to maybe take things to the next level, and this is a really good way of doing it. And for the price as well, for the ridiculously cheap price that I got this for, it's kind of a no-brainer not to. I mean, yeah, if it was a couple of $100, I'd probably think twice, but for this, no-brainer. Absolute no-brainer. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. If so, don't forget to leave it a like so that the YouTube algorithm does its thing and then recommends it to more people who have similar interests as you, who may also be looking at getting a handbrake like this. Also, if you want to see me put this thing through its paces properly, then check out this link on top of the screen right now to my next live stream in Richard Burns Rally. Thanks for watching.